All right. Welcome to the Code Review Weekly Workshop. And we're going to dive into some code review topics, possibly pair up on a code review. We'll see. But let me share some things that I had going on in code review. Uh, Sharing my screen, so we're looking at the agenda. Um, this is a community contribution, and community contribution is much appreciated. And they have a specific issue that's like, yeah, we should solve this issue. Um, but the changes involved, we have a set of, uh, we have in some instances, people can authenticate the URL by supplying tokens as URL parameters. That's generally frowned upon in security land is we shouldn't include any secrets in the URL. But I guess in the past, for some reason, we've had that. And so this is just adding similar to how we have private token param. It's adding deploy token param. So very small change. But my gut just telling me we gotta be super cautious about including security stuff and parameters. Is like, okay, we got to get security involved, in this right away. And sure enough, it's like this is causing a lot of back and forth. And like I think Greg's concerned that we have this previously, and like, okay, we gotta try to figure out what to do here. But from just the code review perspective, is uh if we just hyper is encouragement to not just hyper focus on uh functionality, but looping other people in, and even if you're not sure if like we need to loop other people in, especially when it comes to security, is just always lean towards getting other people's involved, because that helps us things come to light sooner than later. But like this is just a super small amount of changes, and I can see how if someone's just in the code review zone, if this just made it to back end, if it's like, oh yeah, this is good to go, and here we go. It's because
I
we already
think
have.
what's risky is that it's like they're already there, the
Yeah,
other ones. That's what like I'm looking at this, I will be like, okay, it does what it say it's gonna do. Already exists in the code, so clearly like this was approved at least once by someone else and
yeah.
probably multiple else's. Um, so
And
is this bad? I guess I don't
well,
know.
yeah, I think that I mean, I think there's a spectrum of like how much do we trust what's already in master. And I don't think we want to completely treat it as, the most North Star to how we want new code to be. Because sometimes we can't make assumptions about what's in master. Is it still relevant? Did it have the right what's in there? Did that actually have the right, like security checks and stuff? Was there other alternatives that were considered and not chosen for some reason? And there's so much context to what's already in master that um I don't think we should just prioritize consistency with master at all costs.
I think what I would do in that situation, I would see if that change that is similar was uh, quite recent. And if it was, then maybe check that more and see if that got security approval. And if not, or if it's quite old. So there's a chance that
Mm.
we change the approach, then maybe reach out. Um, yeah, I
Yeah.
kind of sometimes get deep into all the Mars when I'm reviewing or writing. It's probably not time efficient, but you can get that context from there.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and so, but I would encourage just consider out of all of the tools we have when we're reviewing MRs. Um, if I saw that like, oh, this was one of the committers of just I can see that really quickly in the editor of like, oh, for these other params, here's committers. rather than me digging through all of it, maybe I'll just ping one of them of like, hey, as you have some context here. This change seems safe. This kind of MR definitely needs a security review. Anytime where it touches a thing called auth, it looks like it also needs a authentication review. But yeah. And no, I do sometimes go spelunking for context as well. But yeah, I just wanted to share this about some. You gotta loop other people because I don't think this approach is going to take it. So um, the result of this, I think, has been we're gonna have to find another way. Uh, but we'll see, maybe. Um, yeah, other thing I thought would be fun, and I'd love to hear how you all, when we're reviewing stuff, I'd love to hear what you all do to help MRs and the whole process with everyone involved become more efficient. Um, I used to really, oh my gosh, I hit something accidentally. Uh, I used to really and enjoy is not the right word. Um, we used to allow pushes, commits from maintainers to be pushed up before merging. And that was really helpful when there was like a super small polish thing of like, oh wow, we have, you know, this really small test isn't quite doing the right thing. I can just change that test, push it up, and merge it. And um, but now for some reasons, mainly like compliance reasons that make it really easy to audit, we don't allow people that have added commits to merge, which also makes sense. But it does really affect our review efficiency because sometimes there's this like it's just like right there, but then it's like, oh man, there's just this little bit that anybody can change real fast. Are we really going to create a whole nother MR for this thing? Uh, and so the example, like I will do, and I'll try to, but it does get difficult when we have to create a whole nother MR. Um, so here we were making some changes, and then there was a method that just wasn't referenced anymore. But this was all ready to go. And it's like, okay, we're gonna pause this for, a whole other MR cycle for them to just remove this reference? Or can I just merge it and then I'll just also remove the reference? And um, so I opted to go for that because I like to do that um, as much as possible. Uh, but you create this other MR and then like master's broken or something, and it's just like so irritating when it's like, oh gosh. Uh, So I had created Samar like a week ago, and then something happened or whatever that just prevented me from like, oh, okay, all right, I got to get this actually in there. Um, but then once it was there, like it's really straightforward to review, and Jose reviewed it and merged pretty quickly. But I don't know. I'd love to hear your thoughts on these kind of efficiency actions that you take in code reviews. I don't know. What do you think?
I I think I try to stay away from creating new MRs if it can be a patch or a suggestion that can be applied. If there was just those 3 lines to be removed anyway, sure, there's nothing left. I think I would just create a suggestion because, well, you have to wait for the author to accept it in order for you to approve it and merge later. But that's still less time than creating a new MR and going through a review cycle with a new MR, I think. And then yeah, something happens and master is
I
broken.
know.
It takes a week to yeah.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
torn. Yeah, I don't know. I think what I want to avoid a lot, what I see people happening is they're like, I'll just create a follow-up, and then the follow-up issue never gets labels or filled out past whatever GitLab does, and then it's tech debt that never gets addressed because they never pick it back up.
Mm.
Um, and it's like a pretty repetitive cycle that I see, which it adds to like the growing tech debt within you know, within our code base, like all the Rubocop disables, I mean, it's just, it adds up. So I don't know. Like I have gone down the route where I thought about creating an MR to like just like fix something, but then I'm in what, Paulina said, where I'm like, oh, I have stuff to do and this is gonna take too long.
Mm,
I don't know. I wish there was like not a non-blocking, but like this is like a tech debt, and I think it's important to address in this MR and like people to be okay with that. Um,
yeah,
but I don't know.
We should have a follow-up day when everyone just does follow-up
good idea.
once a quarter.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Uh, some of those issues are like, I think they're sometimes easy to pick up. But yeah, there's this cost to like just creating a new MR, which isn't great. And it doesn't have to be that way. But for, I mean, for every MR you create, you're gonna get like three bots that give you, huge paragraphs to read, which, part of you is not gonna read it. But uh yeah, there is a lot of overhead. And then yeah, shepherding the pipeline and then uh getting reviewers involved and everything. Yeah, it's in the grand, in the scope of the team, it's probably not ideal sometimes to move things to a separate MR. Um, but I I try to like keep a sense of an MR that I'm reviewing. What's the fatigue on this MR? Like how many back and forths are we? And it's like at some point, even if there's still some polishes to be made, is like, okay, we gotta just merge this. Everybody's tired of this MR. I don't think in this case like anything was too fatigued, but uh that's definitely like a factor I'm thinking in my head a lot. I don't know. Do you all ever find yourselves making decisions and factoring that into the decision of the fatigue on an MR?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I just had one where I had to ask someone to split it up, and they kind of split it, kind of. Um, but then they left something in that we discussed removing, and I was like, well, did you leave this in by mistake? And then there's a lot of like back and forth, and it's one where there's a database reviewer, myself, and then a backend reviewer, and then they have another set of reviews to go through.
Yeah.
Um, I was still like slightly concerned about the implications of like how this MR was going to work, but I'm like, okay, like I've done my best. I have like said my piece. I left a bunch of notes. Luckily, I'm the initial reviewer, so I can like pass
Yeah.
it up to the maintainer, which is like not like my intention is to like kick the can
Yeah.
down the road, but um, you know, at the point that it was at, I'm like, I did my best due diligence. And but yeah, I mean, I just approve it and pass it on because at some point, you know, it's not like fatigue, but yeah. But on the flip side of that, there was one that I was working on that just caused an incident that got merged. And it was like this one, like long running discussion where
Uh-oh.
we missed
Oh,
the test and broke an API endpoint for a bunch of people. And that is a case where it's like, I do feel that the fatigue played a part in that it was a long running MR that went
yeah.
past Summit. So we had people like out, multiple people get involved to review it because people are out and we're trying to help push this along. And yeah, it caused an incident, um, which was not great.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Yeah, I mean, I feel like it does uh, play a part. And then at some point, with someone working here, you kind of like we're all got hired here as engineers. Like you do your best to try to say like this is what I think. I
Yeah.
don't know. I don't know. Like I've never actually like blocked an MR like I'm not merging this um without these change. Like I've never ever
Yeah.
had to do that.
Really?
But at some point, I think I don't know. I would feel very bad if the one that I approved caused an incident
Mm.
because I like definitely still have a little bit of concern about it, but like I don't know
Yeah.
what to
Yeah.
do.
I've got a question regarding that. I know I've definitely I wouldn't say I don't think I've ever said I'm blocking this on Mar. I've left blocking comments and said I'm not gonna I can't merge this until we resolve these. And I think I then was like saying to the extent of you can try to find someone else to merge it, but then I'm gonna just be like looking at you. Um, no, I'm
Okay,
just
question then. Do have you ever had people reassigning to a different reviewer after you reviewed something?
uh I've had that.
Yeah,
Um,
that is one.
Only when
and
I've been out, and it's more so me being like, I'm gonna be out. Please feel free to like pass this over to
Yeah.
someone else, or you can wait.
yeah, I've
Um,
definitely had, and if I don't know, it could feel lame if like it's a bit of a it would hurt my feelings if I left a review and then someone just pinged someone else like right away and didn't even talk to me about it. Would have just been that would have, you know, that would have hurt my feelings. If I had said so, I think to self protect my feelings, if I can predict that they probably aren't gonna like what I have to say, um, I'll say I left some things. I have concerns. Feel free to reach out to a different reviewer for a different perspective on this, whatever. But like, uh, um, and I do think we need to be open for that. It's like it's stuff, but I think there's a social norm of like, hey, we want to assume positive intent from each other, and if someone does like after one interaction, just okay, I'm not interacting with you on this anymore. We're doing this. Is like that's not a really great way to assume positive
Yeah.
intent.
no, yeah, I have not. Yeah, I've not seen that really, but
Yeah.
the
Uh,
only yeah, I have reassigned reviews from people, but that's because they did not answer me in 2 days, and I'm like, I am like I have work to do, and it's nice when I try to get people answers within 24 hours, and
yeah.
like I just feel like because of the time zones, because of like the back and forth, especially if I'm not just going to approve it, waiting 2 days is too long for
Yeah.
me.
Yeah.
Um,
If
but
everyone did that, like, MRs would take weeks.
yeah, it's
And
yeah,
sometimes, yeah, it's a lot.
it's a
Um,
lot, and so
I
um,
I think we've gotten better at like I think everybody generally tries to shoot for this 24-hour thing. Not
Mm.
really? Oh,
Mm.
okay.
people on my team that I work with, so like when we're reviewing each other's MMRs, I feel like those wheels are greased. Like,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
um, they're getting back to me, but like I try to do that for everybody. I do tend to try to prioritize my team members'
Yeah,
reviews.
yeah.
Well, unless they're like very complicated, then I try to make sure that I spend the time I need to spend on those. And if I can like knock a few ones out that are easier. But no, I mean, I feel like the whole change with the busy signal and the red dot, like, although that has been shouted from the rooftops and communicated multiple times, ways and levels, I still have seen people with the busy signal not answering the tag
Mhm.
or the review request for me, and I just give up after 2 days.
Yeah.
Mm.
So maybe I just need to start. I mean, like, I don't want to do earlier than 2 days because technically that is within the guideline window, but like there were people that like they never even responded at all to be like,
Mm.
oh, hey, I was out,
Yeah.
like complete just radio silence. And so like I still don't know if that experiment is fully baked
Mm.
in terms of like how it needs to be done.
Yeah, that's
Um,
interesting. That's an interesting point. I I if I have an MR that's like blocking other MRs and it's like I really want this MR to be moving, I make sure to leave that in the message that I'm sending to somebody of, hey, this is blocking other things. If you can't get to this, let me know. And and that kind of gives me also just opening of like if I don't hear from them for 24 hours, even though that's technically within the window of like how we expect, I felt like I communicated this this really needs some movement sooner than later. So um I always do include that in my messages. If I'm going to be, just really wanting this to come forward, I try to make sure I communicate that to some extent. On
Mhm.
other MRs that are just like, I don't really have time for the MR and the reviewers don't have time to do it. Is like, let's just take our time. I'll assign it to whoever and we can do that. But then I don't know what goes on with our pipeline. Oh man. I feel like every MR at some point has like random failing jobs. Rerunning the pipeline is like just a normal thing. Um, yeah. I had a question, but it's eluding me. I'm not I can't think of it anymore. So yeah, but that was I appreciate you all sharing your thoughts on reviewing things efficiently on where we could do that. And it's interesting to note how sometimes opening another MR is a lot of time. Um oh, I remember the question I was gonna ask. Yes, because we were talking about MR fatigue,
Yeah.
and you mentioned this one MR that was doing a lot, and you think fatigue played a role probably in like,
Yeah.
okay, we got to get this out the door, but then it actually ended up like causing some issue. It sounded like.
Oh, it
Um,
caused a pretty large incident
my
that
my
affected people.
well, GitLab is a perfect product, so I'm sure the issue wasn't too bad. Um,
No, it wasn't. No. Yeah. No, I think the big thing was it ended up breaking an API that is like
yeah,
widely used.
yeah, and
And I
that's
think that
yeah,
is where, the biggest incidents
mm,
happen when it's something that's like an automation is
yeah.
interacting with it and it's widely used.
So
And this is why we don't make breaking
yeah,
changes to the API, but we did not make any.
yeah,
It was
yeah,
not on purpose. It's just,
yeah.
I think, um, it's hard. And I feel like that one suffered from being a community contribution that it's
That's
not
tough.
someone trying to get an MR through in a milestone. They are like going back to it, taking a break, going back to it, rebasing, taking a break. And so as a reviewer, you kind of having to like go back into this review context. You haven't been in a while. Um, and somehow I'm now
And the
involved
code
in
base has changed like since then is like, that's a lot.
yeah.
Um,
So
my my thought was, I used to sometimes like appreciate just spending on certain MRs, spending 5 minutes, and I would comment it sometimes. Sometimes I would throw it in the description, either as a reviewer or an author, but just asking what is the worst thing that could happen. And I'd be curious to know if like on that MR, do you think was it was it possible to predict that this was a possibility with the MR?
I would say yes, and it was definitely a shortcoming on my part because I think the previous MR, which was touching a similar but different API, also caused an incident in the same
Mm,
manner.
yeah.
And there was so much time in between those. And then I think this one was dealing with more GraphQL, and I just have a tendency to pass those off and ask for other people to look at them. I don't do GraphQL very often, and I was worried I was going
Mm,
to miss something.
yeah.
Um, I don't think I actually involved myself in approving and merging it, but I was involved in initial reviews. And I wish I could have remembered, oh yeah, we did this before. And I like literally forgot. And I guess the person writing it, they forgot. Um,
Yeah, the GraphQL API stuff is tough because
it
if
is.
if you like remove a field, um,
Oh no, it's so
ch-
bad.
well, yeah, because all the core like it's not just that this information is not available, but any query using that will blow up, and it's very
Yeah,
challenging.
this one was like the create and put and post APIs were using a field
Mm.
that was accidentally removed.
Oh,
And so
yeah,
all those failed because it was like that doesn't exist.
yeah, that's tough.
Yeah, and I we had the last incident. It was a different but very similar. It was like projects API, groups API.
Mm.
And I like remember it now, but in the context of reviewing this MR, there's so many file changes. It's so, which I just miss it that we didn't have a specific test um to test the old behavior and make sure that it was still. Oh,
Yeah.
you know which one it is. I talked to you about it already. It was the renaming of the field. Is that one? The renaming of the field.
I know. I was
Is
thinking
that
of this
one?
one
What was that one?
because we had a field that I added 4 months ago and we're not just using until today. And then I realized I got the type wrong. I thought we wanted to be a Boolean, but I was like, it really kind of needs to be like a three enum, like kind of need like unset, enabled, and disabled. Um, and uh and I was like, we'll work around it. We're not gonna touch that field. And Chow was like, no, we're gonna do it right. We're gonna and he was and but he opted to we're adding because we're not using it yet. We're adding a new field, deprecating the other one and all that stuff. But like if we were gonna rename it, that's what we were talking about doing. And I was just thinking, oh
Don't
no,
do
I
it.
don't want to do
Don't do
this.
it. Don't do it.
Uh, it's a huge chore. This is an unused database field, an unused GraphQL field, but like our documentation, it is a huge chore to remove this from GraphQL, and it's a huge chore to remove it from the database. It's I was trying to be efficient, and I should have waited until I was actually using it before merging it in. Um, yeah. Well, I asked this question about like what's the worst thing that could happen because sometimes I think it's really helpful for like reviewers and other people to know like okay, even if we're super fatigued, this is like a high the blast radius of this MR is really big, so it's worth the time. And then if something is, if we identify that oh, the worst thing that we happen is actually like something really small and not a lot, then when it takes a long time, we're kind of justified in asking ourselves, like, hey, why are we spending so much time on this? Like, we should probably just be a bit more iterative. Do you think that would be a helpful section in our MR description? Like where we have screenshots and stuff like that? Do you think having a section is like, hey, what's the worst thing that can happen?
I mean, we do that in incidents and change requests. So it's not like an unheard of section when you have, I don't know how much change requests that you work on, but probably not a lot. But my team does infrastructure support for Elasticsearch. So
I
they
think
pretty
GitLab
much like
calls them
ask
merge
that.
requests. I'm joking.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think that it's not a bad idea. Like, just even thinking about it, that might
Yeah.
encourage people to be like, maybe I should put this behind a feature flag. Because I think that reduces any worst thing risk, right? If
Yeah.
you can flag it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just like something about just spending a minute thinking about what's the worst thing that could happen is really helpful.
I mean, I
Uh,
feel like having the instructions on how to test this has been adding that to the template has been helpful because, well, I hope, but I feel like I have found bugs when I'm like trying to test my code and I'm like, oh, something's broken. And I didn't get it for review because I'm like, well, it's not ready yet because it's not working. So, um,
yeah.
open up. Do you have, is it an MR to change those or is it just I forget. Those are MR.
No, for the MR descriptions, I think merge request descriptions are like a project setting.
Oh, it's the special one. Okay. It's not a template. It's the default. So,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. I just asked in the development channel what they think of adding a section. What's the worst thing that can happen? Um, so and the merge request template. I'm curious to see if people think it's a good idea or not. Um, yeah, cool. Uh, yeah, we talked a lot about different things there. Those are the only things I was bringing up to share. Does anyone else have anything that they ran into interesting wise related to code review?
Not a big thing, but I actually reviewed two MRs recently about with feature flags. And I realized how long the documentation for feature flags got. It's a lot of reading now. So yeah, how you recommend to go through it and search for things you're trying to review because I got caught with like there was a work in progress type changing to beta And I was like, do we actually want to change the type when enabling? And it turns out work in progress has to be disabled. And if you want it enabled, you have to change the type, which I did
Yeah.
not know. Yeah.
I thought the work in progress one, I've used that once when I have a back end change that maybe the front end change is being worked on.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I thought that was a better description because it's not like a de-risk. It's like the front end's not ready.
Yeah.
But then changing it was weird. And I kind of wanted to like skip, like, I feel like we should be able to skip the initial review because it's such a small change to go from one type to if it's just like a feature flag
Yes.
type
Oh, for
change.
sure.
Um, because then you have to get two reviewers and it's just like, I just want to change this thing.
Yeah. Oh, we actually did just maintain a review on that because yeah, it was just too small.
I think I'm going to
So,
make an executive decision next time I do that.
hmm.
Mm.
So I see. I almost correct me if I'm wrong, but I almost it sounds to me that like I have not looked at this. I saw people talking about it. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm not ready for this update. I get so used to like a certain way of doing things, then we change it, and then yeah. Anyways, um, but it looks like we've split up development as a type into work in progress and beta.
De-risk and de-risk.
Oh, and
There's a de-risk. I feel like I don't know what beta is supposed to be for, but I feel like de-risk is supposed to be the original intention of feature flags is de-risking production issues. They're supposed to be very short-lived, and then you quickly clean them up once you realize that things are fine.
what?
That was my interpretation of it. Whether that's what the documentation says or not, I do not know.
Oh, okay. All right.
Um,
I'm gonna share my screen. Uh, Paulina, can you get Morrison here? We gotta review these docs. I'm joking. Uh, so look at this. I mean, isn't all of it to de-risk, whatever? All right, short-lived feature flags used to de-risk GitLab.com deployments.
yeah,
Most feature flags used are this de-risk type.
yeah. I feel like they should be because if you're trying to avoid what's the worst that could happen, it should be this. If you're working on a
Maximum lifespan
feature,
two
yeah,
months.
2 months.
Doesn't need to be documented in the all feature flags and GitLab page given their short-lived. Oh,
Mhm.
interesting. Oh, interesting. Okay. But
Yeah,
then
what's nice is
beta.
I feel like well, I don't know about beta,
But
but
look at this. This sounds a lot like we need to de-risk this because we're not confident we'll be able to scale, support, maintain a feature in its current form.
I think the difference is the maximum lifespan is 6 months, and it's supposed to have documentation because this allows you to let it hang out there while you work on it.
Yeah. So like try it out for some time and not just like make sure it
Uh,
doesn't break when you release it.
Hmm.
Yeah.
de-risk. Okay. All right. Yeah, here's all of our feature flags. Uh, it's a lot.
Yeah, and another thing I learned actually going through the docs is that you can create a patch for automatic removal of the feature flag. So it's a patch file next to the feature flag definition. Um,
Oh,
and
wow.
then it gets removed with your patch once
What?
the time is passed. Yeah.
That's crazy. Wow. Oh wow. Yeah, okay, so
Somewhere
that's it looks
down
like
the page.
yeah, it looks like development is split up into those types. Oh man, that's wild. Um I'm gonna have to I'm not sure what's a beta and what's a de-risking thing. I mean, all feature flags is meant to de-risk things, right?
But it's specifically to
Yeah,
de-risk the deployment to GitHub.com,
yeah.
I think. It's
I feel like
specifically.
those de-risk flags, you should be aiming to get those things out within like a week of being fully enabled. Like that, as soon as you have that 24 hours, you need to be opening up the MR to get rid of it. Like that is
I
like,
see. I see.
like versus we're
Do you see
working on like
that
Zook.
feature? Do you see us do that a lot with feature flags?
No, no, probably not because everyone's busy. I'm trying, I'm trying to be quicker about it, but yeah, I would say no.
Yeah, I'm surprised. I don't see that a lot. I see us like we're working on a long feature, or we rolled out the feature in such an MVC quality that we still can't support everything. So it's behind a feature flag because for self-managed is a different problem than .com sometimes. Uh, that I'm surprised to see in the documentation most feature flags used at GitLab are of the GitLab com de-risk type.
I
Uh, because I
think
don't.
that's maybe because they probably just converted all the originals to that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know
Yeah.
though. I mean, you're right. Like beta, work in progress. I don't know. I feel like the MR that I was concerned about whether the thing was going to be okay or not, I would like them to have a de-risk flag because I know from previous incident experience that it's like 6 hours sometimes to get something roll back. And that's like the fast mode.
Yeah.
So having a flag means like you could do the fast mode, but you can immediately revert back to the way it was.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, now at that point, like it's a de-risk flag. Like hopefully you can fix whatever the issue is, but maybe it ends up becoming like a whip or like I don't know. This is a good discussion. We should bring maybe we talk about it in the like CTO office hours or something. I
Mm.
don't want to bring it up.
Yeah. I'd be curious what like Sabrina's perspective on feature flag management. We've had a lot of conversation before she hopped on I think even at that level too of like, do you remember seeing some issues about like feature flags being enabled by default? Do you remember seeing these issues? We were having
I
discussions
think
just.
there was a pretty large discussion I saw in Slack about whether a feature flag could be introduced and immediately enabled as part of the
Mm.
introduction. Um,
Yeah, we had there was one discussion about like wanting to push us to be a little bit more leaning towards being a little more risky with our iterations and like, hey, if we merge, like feature flags are going to be enabled by default because we want to get that, I don't know, feedback or something, or like trying to lean towards that. And it just doesn't fit with like how we do a lot of like work in progress kind of feature flag stuff. Um, but all of these conversations I know were like before Sabrina hopped in as our CTO, so I'd be curious to know uh, some of that. But now I haven't gotten to touch feature flags since we made these changes, so I'm curious if I will appreciate them
I
or.
think you'll like the new script things. Someone on my team, Dimitri, worked on adding, I think, FZF, which lets you kind of like easily access the group names. You can like type in your group name and it has like
Ooh,
picker.
cool.
And so just run the script and see if you like that better. And
Okay.
maybe that positive experience will help. Because I
That's,
know what you're feeling. Like I hate change sometimes it's like really hard for me and I fight
yeah.
it a lot. But the new script is pretty sweet. And I think I might have added it. I think I did. Either he did or I did. The question about whether it's an EE flag or not, because there's a EE folder for flags. Who knew?
Oh yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
I
That's
did
interesting.
not know. But now that I know, I'm like, well, this script needs to do it for you because we shouldn't have to
Yeah, that's interesting.
with
Wait, so there's an EE folder for flags. So if I do
yeah,
it, I can't check those in CE, can I?
you shouldn't.
Yeah.
But they
Yeah.
really should only be flags that are referenced only in EE code and like all the stuff that my team work on should always just, I mean, like, I feel like that's a smell right there. If you put that EE flag in and then something's blowing up in the CE test, then something's not right in the
Yeah,
code.
that's interesting. That is really interesting. Yeah. No, yeah, I am gonna be creating a feature flag in a little bit. I guess I'm gonna spend the rest of the day deciding whether it's a de-risk, a work in progress, or beta. Uh
I would think about how long you expect it to be in the code base and then
then
use
it's
that
gonna be a
in
beta.
use that as your decision point. I
Yeah.
don't think there's any like I don't know what they're doing at those timelines. I'm assuming it is rolling into that automation issue that we get sent for our teams
Yeah.
every about
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
here's the long running flags. Um,
I,
but I don't think there's any like
yeah.
OKRs assigned to it yet.
How many like how many feature flags does your team like get
We
pinged
have
on
a lot.
that get pinged on those issues of like being
Mhm.
around for
There's
too long?
some from like 14, maybe
Oh,
14
Oof.
something.
That's long.
we have one from 11.
Oh, see, it makes me feel better. My skeleton's in my closet, your skeleton stays in yours. No, I think sometimes too, it's like priority change and the feature's not being actively worked on, but it needs to stay in
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
now.
Uh, what about you, Paulina? Source code.
Oh,
There's a lot of
uh,
feature flags because it's a
I'm yeah, that's a best. I'm not sure how many, but like from previous team, I have a feature that was removed in 16.0, and now we have a new feature that is named exactly the same, and the old one is still like parts of it is still left behind feature flag because they disassembled the team and no one has time to remove the blocking parts.
that's confusing.
Yeah.
That's funny.
So yeah, so you have metrics and metrics, and they two different features.
Oh no.
And also the word metric is not the
Oh
easiest
yeah.
distinguishable word in the code base. Yeah.
Yeah. We definitely run into that problem with remote development workspaces.
Oh.
And workspace uh brings a bit of confusion too. And like the web IDE, like most people when they hear the web IDE, they're thinking of a whole remote development environment and not how we've interpreted the web IDE. Yeah, we run into all sorts of, but it's kind of too late to change some of the ways we name some of this stuff. Um, yeah. Well, I guess we're at time, and I don't want to run up to the top of the hour. I want to probably take a little break before the next meeting. So, but thanks for hopping on and chatting about code review and bringing up the feature flag docs because I was trying to stay away from those, but I guess I can't.
There's also a blueprint.
I know.
Yeah.
I know.
So,
All right,
that's
I'll let you all
amazing.
go. Have a good rest of the day.
Thanks.
Bye.
Take care.